Hi, Christina. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Michelle.
So,
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So, we're here to talk about your book, Every
Mm,
9 Minutes.
yes, we are.
And I'm going to start by asking you some questions about the book.
Okay.
So, your journal plays an important role in your story. And I was wondering if that was your first experience with writing.
Yeah, now that you asked that, it probably was. And I was young, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we don't think we're young then, but
Mm-hmm.
I was young. And there's something about a journal that just brings innocence and raw honesty because you
Mm-hmm.
think that only you are ever going to see it. So I think that it helped a lot over the years, that's for sure.
Yeah, and there's probably like difficult things that you can't express to other people that you feel safe expressing in that environment.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So you obviously had a lot to deal with throughout your childhood, and I was wondering if there were any books that brought you comfort during that time or provided an escape.
Yeah, and I go back to I don't know why I think of the majority of the intensity of it for me wasn't. I know this is really weird. When you're really tiny, you really don't know any better and you're just confused as to what's happening to you. But as you get into that tween age, when you start to realize, holy cow, there's something, this is really messed up. You need some kind of advice. And for me, it was reading. Judy Bloom probably saved my life. I don't even know if
Yeah.
she knows it, but to me, it was the innocence of other things where children had issues, but not my issues,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
so I use them to deal with a lot of things, and there's also hope and a little bit of fantasy with the Judy Bloom part. And then for whatever reason, I was again probably, yeah, maybe fifth or sixth grade, maybe fifth grade, when I read The Phantom Tollbooth. And
Okay.
that
Yeah.
book to this day, there's a little boy in there that just had gumption, He had a lot of issues, and he found a way that he thought was going to solve them. And then in the long run, he did. He learned a lot, but he also realized that even though he thought his life was dull and boring, and I didn't think mine was dull or boring, I just thought it was horrible. He found that it's worse elsewhere too, you know.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. My story, and gosh, talk about learning from writing and publishing. And I learned over the years too that what happened to me, and I know this, I don't want to downplay anything like that, child abuse in any way, but is so light, and it's a terrible way to explain it, than other stories out there. Some of them are just horribly tragic, where people just didn't survive, or the abuse was so much worse.
Hmm.
And not that I condone any abuse, but
Of course.
it's
Yeah.
just, oh my God, the stories that these people who've read my book will reach out to me and say, thank you for writing, because this is what happened to me. And I'm reading it going, oh my God, that was so bad, but they told
Yeah.
me.
So what was it that led you to share your story with the world?
You know, I think I'm gonna be honest with you. I think it was anger originally. I was so
Hmm.
mad that no one seemed to care that it happened, or they just dismiss it. They don't want to believe it because nobody wants to talk about that within their family.
Right, yes.
Uh, and then I started writing shortly after I shared with my husband for the first time what had happened to me. So I had kept that inside for a long time. So now it's out there and it's just out there in your face. And I said,
Hmm.
got to kind of release it somehow. So I started writing. And then when I got done originally, and I don't know if I talked to you about this, but I had 680 pages of my life on paper. Um,
Yeah.
and people say, how do you write? I don't think I could do that. I just get it out and then look at it and say, well, nobody needs to know that. That's really boring. I think I spent more years editing than I did obviously writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I imagine that the process of just getting it all out on paper was helpful.
Therapy. And it's
Hmm.
funny because you start writing and it's a character to me, because it was so many years, it started when I was 4 years old. That little girl wasn't me. I'm writing about what happened to that girl.
Hmm.
But as I'm writing, and it's weird because it was me, I'm learning about myself, and as I get older, I'm like, well, holy cow, this is why I am the way I am. I should
Yeah.
have done something differently there. But until it was on paper in words and in your face, it's different because you're looking at it as, okay, this is a different character and I need to either get better or solve a problem or understand why
Mm-hmm.
I am the way. And that's huge.
Yeah. And of
Yeah.
course, you can look at it from an adult perspective, and at the time, you might not have had the tools equipped to
Yeah.
deal with it. So,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
the innocence and the ignorance of a child, you can't, there's no getting around that. Everybody is born, and you have to go through these horrible experiences. So, to write it at 30 years old is a whole different story than I couldn't have answered any of those questions growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, what sort of message would you like readers of Every 9 Minutes to take away from your book?
Um, I think that, a lot of, I have a couple of things that kind of like my little red, they bug me a little bit because people call us survivors. And I don't like that word because
Okay.
surviving just means you're breathing. We all
Mm-hmm.
survived it if we're alive, but that doesn't mean anything because that's horrible sometimes because you're dealing with this internal craziness. Um, I think that to not survive it, but to thrive in life and kind of, and you're never going to overcome it either because you can't overcome something like that. But you have to find a balance where it doesn't own you.
Yes.
And I think that's just that goal. Look for that. Don't try to overcome it. You're not surviving it doesn't mean, hey, we're all great and everything's fine and it never happened. That's I don't know if I can swear, but that's bullshit. So I think it's just a balance. And to this day, and it gets, I think it gets worse as you get older. And
Okay.
that's a harsh reality. I found that when I hit my 50s, and I think it's because you're smarter,
Mm-hmm.
you're wiser, and everything that you kind of reasoned out back when you were a kid, now that it was wrong and those people should have believed you and all those things. So it makes you angry for a time. I'm
Yeah.
I'm still angry, I know, but I
Yeah.
balance. But you have to, I know why I'm angry, and instead of doing something negative to either myself or others, I find writing and talking about it is the positive way to deal with the anger.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
don't, but it's okay to be angry because that wasn't a good thing that happened to, a child.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Do your family know that you've wrote the book?
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Mhm. So how did they react to that?
They're not supportive. I
Hmm.
have four brothers. My mom, uh, I don't know if you read the book, you'll understand why my mom is the way
Yeah,
she
I've
is.
read it, yeah.
Terrible. Um, she's just a weak person and misses her husband, and it's just that was a horrible situation. Um, they don't want to believe that that happened in the family.
Hmm.
So they've taught their children. They have children that have children. I have nieces and nephews, but some of them uh, have been taught that Christina's sick, she needs help.
Right,
And
okay. And
this just came out after the book, and that hurts. But
of course, yeah. And does
I,
that include your two younger stepbrothers as well?
yeah, that was
Um,
surprising. My youngest brother was the biggest surprise, where he just really will
mhm.
get on social media and tell people his father was the greatest thing that ever lived. That one hurts.
Of
But you
course, yeah.
again, people see it and they'll connect. Did you see what he wrote? I'm like, I know. It's hard. It's really, really hard. Um, but I don't want, like, it's almost like they're trying to break you.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't want to believe it in their life. It's very inconvenient to bring it into their family. So
Hmm.
therefore, it's easier to dismiss me, to say negative things about me because they don't have the strength to deal with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so that's what it
it's
is. It's a place,
horrible.
yeah.
Yeah.
So have you got any advice to anyone considering writing a memoir about the life?
Yeah. I think, people ask all the time, write it, just get it on paper. I think, and it was for me too, it's intimidating because the only thing you have to compare it to, it seems that we go to, oh, the bestsellers, the biggest and bestsellers in whatever category you're trying to write in.
Hmm.
And that's terrifying because you're like, how am I ever going to be them? And I say, just get it all on paper, misspellings, bad grammar, everything, get it all down, and then start to clean up. And I will say this, and I always say this, editing is 10 times harder than writing.
Hmm.
I cut my book almost in half, but the last editor that I had, and I loved her, she was priceless to me. She probably gave me the best group of advice. And one thing was, if you're reading a chapter or even a page and it's not moving that story forward, doesn't have a purpose, then odds are it doesn't need to be there.
Hmm.
And I said, wow, that's a great thing. And that last kind of um, I went through it the last time before Christmas of 2020, Christmas of 2020, and I spent 6 weeks just going through it, and I cut it down a lot of pages. And what I found is when I look at my reviews, is I didn't put this, I read this in one sitting.
Hmm.
Wow. So I don't know if I cut too much. I don't know, but that's not a bad thing. This book, I couldn't put this book down. And I give credit to my editor for that, because Christina would have had 680 pages and people probably going, this is the most boring thing in the world. Um, but I couldn't get from the beginning to the end without telling you that I had a sandwich on Thursday when I was 12, because my brain couldn't do that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and it was connecting everything together
Yeah.
and such. Yeah.
Yeah. You're trying, you're going through your entire life. And I was like, holy cow. And things that, and this is, you find this a lot in life. We have a business, and, things that are important to me that I think are very important may not be important for the overall public. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It might
Yeah.
not be, I'm holding it personally important, but it's not, so that was a big balance too,
Hmm.
and you got to kind of take your ego out of it. Yeah.
Do you think you'll write any more books?
If I get to retire from work, yeah.
Yeah, if you find the time.
Holy cow, yeah, I work so much. I maybe, people ask, I'd love to do public speaking on this subject. So I think I need to kind of conquer this first.
Yeah. To
Let I have
get
a
through.
purpose. Yeah, yeah. It'd be nice to maybe help, you know, um, this world, with less abuses out there, or help people deal with what they've been through. That's more important to me now than writing again. I
Yeah.
love to write, I do, but
Hmm.
um, that would be, I think it'd be selfish of me, you
If
know.
you did write, do you think it would be like a continued memoir, or do you think you'd rather go at writing some fiction?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it would
Hmm.
probably be more of my life from the time that that book ended to now has
Hmm.
has its own like amazing journey, and I've been very fortunate in some ways. And it's a weird thing to say, is that I think some of the reasons that I have been fortunate is because of what happened to me, because I have the ability to deal with things in a
Yeah.
different way. I work
Hmm.
with I've been working with Gene Simmons from Kiss, from the
Oh,
rock group
right.
Kiss. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So yeah, and I work with him. I've worked with him for almost 10 years as a part-time job from our other company.
Hmm.
But that's a man he's a very successful man, very business-ish, very unique personality that almost nobody can kind of work with side by side, because he's just very good at what he does. And I mesh with him well, but it's because of my past experiences in this book,
Yeah.
work and in this,
Hmm.
so I don't know. And there's a if I did, it's how to use what's the horrible experience that's happened to you to your advantage.
Yeah.
If
And
I,
building up your strength
I
and resilience.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that's great. So you very kindly agreed to ask me anything questions. So I
yeah,
put
I
you
did.
on the
That
spot.
was a good idea.
So just for time reasons, I've just picked three out of the group that have, asked. So
Mhm.
the first one I want to ask you is, did you find writing, I think you touched on this a little bit, but did you find writing your story therapeutic and cathartic, or was it more of a traumatic experience?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely therapeutic. And traumatic because you have to keep reading it over and over by editing. And that
Hmm.
by the end, I'm like, I can't read this again. I can't go through it. And I go back to my editor who went through some of the scenes and said, look, here's an abuse scene. you need this to be more detailed. And I was like, no, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So that last pass of editing, she sent it back to me, I think around Halloween of 2020.
Hmm.
I sat on it for almost 4 or 5 weeks. I couldn't do it. I said, I can't do this. I'm not going to publish this book. And then one day I got up and I said, just gonna suffer through it. And I did it. And she was right, but it was hard.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sharing the scene of I think the worst scene in the book is when I was 12 years old and with my brother and my dad. That was the hardest
Yeah.
scene to.
Yeah.
So,
So did you have any formal therapy or counseling to deal with what you'd been through?
yeah, I did. Once I told my husband, he made me go. And I did. And it was very good. And I think that's also what sparked me to write the book. So
Right.
yes. I don't now. I do just it was years ago.
Yeah. So
Mm.
that was something that helped you at the time.
Yeah, yeah, totally did.
Hmm. Okay, so the final question we have in this section is how has your life changed since the point of we left you at, at the end of the book?
Yeah. Well, at the end, I was young. I was 30 years old. I'm
Hmm.
58 now. Um, I own my own business. I started an indoor blacklight monster themed mini golf, um, venue to raise $5,000 to edit the book because we didn't have money back then.
Hmm.
Um, so that's how our business started. Today we have 34 locations across the
Wow.
country and in Canada. We franchised it. Um, so that grew. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, uh, we finally got a little break in life. And I thought, it's time to, publish this book.
Yeah.
And I tried publishing it over the years. I just never was at the right point in my life.
Hmm.
Publishing's obviously changed. You can self-publish, and that is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And obviously, you can get every 9 minutes at the Book Dragon if people are
Yes.
interested in reading that.
Thank you so
And
much for the way.
yeah, and I have a book signing for it on October the 15th, which unfortunately, because of your location, you won't be present
Yeah.
at, but they will be available in store to have signed copies of your book.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Oh, and thank you for your time, Christine. It's been lovely to talk to you today.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.